listening to the Rainmaking Podcast, hosted by high-stakes headhunter, author, and professional speaker, Scott Love.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Love, and thanks for joining me on the Rainmaking Podcast. Today, my guest is somebody that I've known for some time. Mike Lejeune is an old friend of mine who does consulting and speaking and training within all different industries, especially professional services. He comes out of the recruiting industry, and his expertise is really bringing heart to business. In our session today, Mike's going to talk about selling with your ears instead of your mouth. I hope that you get some great ideas from Mike's interview today. Hey everyone, this is Scott Love. Thanks for joining me on the Rainmaking Podcast. I've got a special guest, my close friend, Mike Lejeune. I've known Mike for a long time. He's a colleague in the executive search industry who now works as a consultant, author, and professional speaker. And today we're talking about selling with your ears instead of your mouth. Mike, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Oh, Scott, it's just an honor to be able to play with you.
Yeah, this is great. You've got this amazing reputation in business where you've been there, you've done that, you've done very well. But tell people that might not know who you are. What's your story? Where did you come from in business? And what are you doing today?
Yeah, Scott, I always thought my life was kind of a random journey. But when I look back on it, I feel like I've had a rope tied around me. It's been kind of dragging me to where I am. I guess I was in South Louisiana, named Lejeune. You can probably guess where I'm from. My parents spoke French before they spoke English. Moved to Houston, Texas, and got in this wacky business of the recruiting industry.
Right. Wacky indeed.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, it's like I went to work for a company because of the fact there was one office with 44 desks in it, and there was only 3 guys in the office. The rest were women. I'm going, this is the career path for me, right here. So that was my great, strategic plan for becoming a recruiter. But
right.
I got into it, and after a couple of years, I found out that I started developing some chops in it. And a lot of it has to do with the fact in the recruiting industry, which makes you, I think, good is, and that's whether you're working within what they call third-party recruiters or a search firm or staffing company, or you're working in-house in some type, or you're literally working in a business development mode, which
right.
you end up with, is that it's the heart that you bring in, as opposed, I think, to being the tactician, the person who's out there trying to close the deal.
Right.
And I became a startup specialist for the company, started up 5 different offices around the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And ended up going out and started up my own firm and merged in with a friend of mine to death for a while. Then I joined up with Steverson and Company, which at the time was, again, it was a woman-owned business. Now that I thought about this from a career standpoint, there was only 8 women and me working in the company. So maybe there's a path there. But I went and I started up their accounting division for them. And within a couple of years, we made up half the sales of the company, became a partner. And we built it into just one of the top recruiting firms that focused here in the Texas marketplace, started up a software company. And then 5 years ago, my business partner, who I had joined up with, Tommy, my dad said it was when I became the wisest man he ever met, because 15 years ago, she went from my business partner to my wife. So we were running the company together. 5 years ago, she said, it's time to sell the company for you to go do what God created you to do, which is to help leaders and people raise their level of performance to be all that they're capable of being.
Right.
On this journey of consulting. And so that's what I do now. And so I'm a keynote speaker, and I do consulting specifically on leadership development and business development because of and that's where the title comes from, selling with your ears instead of selling with your mouth.
Well, I think for those listening that aren't really familiar with the recruiting industry, it's what I think is the purest form of sales, because it's a double sell, and we sell a product that can actually say no at the end of the day. The candidate can say, oh, I think I'm going to stay with my firm, and then you've got to start all over again. And so I think the advantage that people like you have and the experience you have and how it can benefit others listening to this is that it's professional services on steroids. It's very deep and meaningful in every certain way. And it's 100% business development, because you're not offering any sort of service that you're going to do like lawyers, where they're having to sell their services. They're having to do business development, and they get the client, then they go forth and they do their work. Your work is selling that relationship and all that. So tell us about what's on your mind today in today's market, in this new world of 2021. where there's a lot of optimism in the world. What's kind of the key word on your mind in selling professional services today, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to hit on two things. One is when you talk about selling professional services, and the key word is relevance. And I'd like to say that I came up with that myself, but I forget what it was, Scott. It was probably 8-9 years ago. LinkedIn came to Houston with 6 senior vice presidents, and they did this workshop. And they talked about building community and standing out, building a network. And they pointed something out. They pointed out that the way that you sell is in the mind of the person you're trying to connect with is, do they see you as being somebody who's relevant to them? And there's never been a time and I can now measure my career like you can in decades as opposed to years, that this has been more important than coming out of this pandemic time and trying to deal with the economic challenges and the political, blurring of all the stuff that's out there. And it has to do with, and that's why I tie the word selling back into it, is that I grew up, and the reason I told this story about my background is I wasn't trained in sales. I was thrown into this business and I had to learn as I went along. And so I started trying to become the seller, I call it the pitch man. And the challenge we run into in today's time, when you're selling professional services, if you come across as the pitch person, that door is not going to open up for you.
Right.
And so you got to spin that around, and you got to have that person see you as being somebody as relevant to them.
Well, how do you do that then? What do people need to do to be seen that way, Mike?
I think today, right now, more than anything else, we got to be empathetic listeners. As salespeople, as business developers, as marketeers, we have to be empathetic listeners. And the reason for that is that we're in a unique time period where if you look at what's taken place, literally on a global basis, is people have moved into reset mode. They're rethinking things. They're rethinking their situations. The reason that home sales, I kept thinking when this thing hit, oh my God, the value of my home is going to start crashing.
Right.
And the opposite happened. I'm going, God, that tells you that I'm no soothsayer. I mean,
right.
But what happened was that people started looking at their current situation. They started going, is this the house that I want? And what do I need? And if I'm going to be here. So there's a reset that's going on in the company. It's like the stuff that I've been putting up with from my boss, I don't know if I want to do that anymore.
Yeah, right.
And companies are going through reset mode. I had one client I was talking to, what they did is they went through and looked at all their systems and processes and said, look, this is what we need to go. We need to hunker down, not lay people off. We got to figure out how do we streamline our organization? How do we improve our systems and processes? And so because of this reset mode that's taking place, we have to not be pitching our wares, but probing and asking questions about not just the situation that they're in, but what problems are they wrestling with right now? And if we focus our conversation on them, what happens is it's a more enjoyable phone call or meeting with the person because they're talking about them, not listening about us.
Right. Do you think it's hard for people to make that transition, make that switch?
Yeah, it was for me.
Why do you think that is for most people, Mike?
Because I think that what happens is that we're focused on our agenda when we're trying to create an interaction or a relationship, a business relationship. It's our agenda that we're focused on. And it's the biggest problem that I think that we face is that how do I have a discussion with you and be more focused on you and your needs and outcome than my need to make a sale, my need to get you as a client? How do I spin that thought process and be comfortable knowing that there's a high chance that it's not going to be a one-call sale?
Right.
I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but if you're talking about, you work the legal area, how many times does a lawyer have to talk to a potential client before they go, okay, I'm willing to sign on and let you take the case?
Right. Yeah, it can take several. I mean, it can take years before they get them to sign on the line and send a retainer check.
Yeah, that's because professional services is not a commodity.
That's right.
It literally is. When I think about the market, the clients you serve, the clients that I serve, the marketplace that they play in it's very sophisticated. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And there's usually, if I want to get somebody to draw up my will, I can get somebody to give me a boilerplate will and fill in some stuff or whatever. But if I want somebody to protect my family, totally different conversation.
Right. You're absolutely right. I think that's because the problems that executives have in professional services affect them on a personal and an emotional level. Even though it's something related to the business, they feel it and it's meaningful to them. And there's risk associated with that. There's risk associated with an executive making a decision to hire someone in professional services, whether they're an accountant or CPA or a recruiter or an attorney.
Yeah.
There's that risk.
Yeah. And the reason for that is if you look psychologist reports out, they all say that, we're not supposed to get our own sense of self-worth out of what we do, right? That's psychology 101.
Right.
Here's the problem is that as human beings, and I think most of the people listening to this will probably fall into that category, as human beings, we get our sense of self-worth out of what we do.
Right.
That's just reality. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is that if I'm making a mistake, if there's a problem that's going on, if there's pain that's going on in my life, my self-worth can be attached to that. My value to the organization can be attached to that.
Right.
And so I think that's the dilemma that they run into with what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, good or bad, that's the way a lot of people are. And that's why they see their significance, their self-worth attached to that problem being solved. So they want it done right. And they don't want to risk anything that's going to jeopardize that. So I think, and this is one thing I've learned just in my own practice and something I was talking about with my colleague Kayla, is that whenever I have a conversation with a new partner candidate, I tell them, this isn't the Scott show. This is about you. If you go forward and you look at my client and you're not interested in them, it's not going to hurt my feelings. The only thing you need to do is what's in your best interest. And I found, Mike, that when I say that, when I kind of release the hold that they think that I have on my agenda, then I find that I've gained more trust with them. For example, I have a candidate. Here's a case study. I've got a deal, a placement that took place. Candidate starts this month. And I felt that, and she wanted to look at other firms. Obviously, everybody wants to look at other options, but I don't get a fee on those other options. And she knows that too. But the only way I could have managed that effectively was by releasing that and telling her, you need to do that. You owe it to yourself to explore the options in front of you. And if my client's opportunity can help you, albeit if not, it's not going to hurt my feelings. And realtors don't sell every house that they show. And I don't want you to feel any pressure to make any decision one way or another. You need to do only what's in your personal best interest. And when you can release it. And the thing is, though, you're not going to close every sale that way, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
And you need to release that. You need to realize that you channel business so that, and when I tell my candidates, I say, my goal is to align your personal career goals and professional goals so that they intersect at the nexus of law firm strategy. And if I can do that, that's fine. And if it's not a fit, it's not going to hurt my feelings. And so I think we need to subjugate our agenda and place it below the self-interest of our clients. What do you think about that concept, Mike?
That's the beauty of what you're saying, Scott. It focuses right back in how we started this conversation. Is that in serving the candidate, as well as the client that she went to work for, you weren't thinking about your agenda. You were focused on them and their needs and their wants. And here's what happens. If I focus on you, I can see our relationship and you call it transaction or whatever. I can see it with much more clarity than if I'm looking at it from my perspective. That's the magic dust of when I can flip and be focused on you and have the conversation on you and you feel heard. You will open up and share your needs and wants and problems and fears, whatever, at a much deeper level. I can't call you. I can't have a meeting with you and say, Scott, now tell me your problems and your It doesn't work that way.
Click.
It doesn't work that way. So what I've got to do, but if I'm focused on you and I'm listening, and I was working with a client on this the other day, in the fact that they were trying to think about what they wanted to say instead of what the person was saying to them.
Right.
And I said, what you're doing is that you're not being present in the moment. You're thinking about where you're headed as opposed to being present in the moment and focusing on who you're talking to, what are they saying, and responding to that, and recognizing that with experience and preparation, the further questions, the further directions are going to be revealed to you as the conversation goes along. But if you stay present in that moment and move you out of the picture and focus on them, it's powerful, and how quickly you can develop relationships that way.
How do you think we can get out of that spot where we're not present? How do you think we can get present in the moment, Mike?
I think from a technique standpoint, Scott, one of the best ways to do it is when somebody is responding to a question is repeat back to them what you're hearing them say.
Right.
Okay. And actually what's really cool is especially if there's any kind of pain or problem, and then tie the emotion that's associated. If somebody's telling you something, so it sounds like it's kind of frustrating to them, say, "Boy, Scott, that sounds like that's really frustrating to you." And then, what impact is that having on you?
Right.
It's sort of staying on it. I call it 3 levels before you move on. But the key part of it has to do with people today. I shouldn't say today. I think that this is since the age of time. People want to be heard. They want their voice to matter. And especially in professional services, if they think you're going to sell them a cookie cutter, it's like big box on the shelf. I'm going to take and give this to you. If they feel like that's what's happening, the sale doesn't move forward. The business relationship doesn't move forward. It's everything that you can do to keep the conversation personalized toward them and about them. And that's why I think there's power in the questions that we ask.
Do you think that this crisis has helped us or given the ability to have those deeper, more meaningful conversations with clients and prospects?
I do, and I'll tell you why. This is another one of my one-word answers. The word is, it goes back as to reset. But what has happened is this economic condition and the pandemic, because there's 2 factors. There's not just one. I'm down in Houston. I'm in the Gulf Coast. I'm in the oil capital of the world, and energy prices have fallen through the floor. And so you got that economic spanking that's taking place. If you're in the hospitality industry, you have the pandemic, and now you have the economic fallout that comes from the pandemic. And then you have those companies are doing okay in spite of the pandemic. But what's happening is the pandemic is causing frustrations and weird stuff. I mean, so a friend of mine went to see his parents for Christmas and walked out of the Christmas with all 8 of them coming down with COVID. It's just happening, and so, but that it's just causing people because of, as we're trying to process, where's my priorities? My daughter just got married the 2nd week in November.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. If this was video, I'd show you a picture. It was pretty cool. Because the reason why she went from 175 people at the wedding to 22 people in my house. She said, "Dad, can I get married in your house?" And what was so cool is she and I were talking about this just the last week. And she says, what we experienced with the wedding in the house, because the way it was much more intimate. And she said, I don't think I want to go and throw this big party I was going to throw in a year from now and have the big traditional thing all over again. There's a reset of priorities that's coming into play.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and so that's why I think is if you can earn the right to ask those questions and to continue going. I call it peeling the onion. If you can't be the guy who walks in and in 30 seconds go, okay, here's what's going on. And they give you an answer. And then because of one thing that they say, now you run off and you say, well, here's the solution to your problem. I was on a call just before you and I got on. I was explaining something to somebody and they said, well, it's a great idea. However, here's a problem that you have with the idea that you had. You got to do this, this, and this. Didn't ask me any questions. And so what was interesting, it was a friendly, collegial type of conversation. I finished the conversation feeling kind of incomplete. Yeah. She didn't ask any questions about the stuff that she wanted to share. And what happened was, we were both in agreement, but she came across kind of pushing back on me. And I feel like she didn't understand where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. And it's just a learning lesson that as we're interacting with people from a professional services standpoint, if somebody gives you a piece of information, you got to peel that onion deeper,
right,
and then deeper, and then deeper. And once you've bled the valve, it's kind of like when I do platform work like you've done. It's been an honor to be able to share the platform with you and watch your talent come out.
Likewise.
As well as your humor. You're wacky.
I'm silly, boy. I'm silly.
But if you could see this, if I had a glass in my hand, and in professional service, I've got a glass in my hand, and I want to have input into you, and the glass of water is completely filled up. There's no room for me to pour my water into your water glass. It's full. So what I got to do is I got to drain water out of your water glass to create room for mine to come in. That's the epitome of professional services sales. I got to drain this water glass. I got to pull enough information from you so that when I come in and say, well, here's my recommendation of how we should move forward, you're going to be open to hearing it because you're going to feel understood and valued. And that's the heart of, I think, what you and I are talking about, which is why I talk about selling with your ears instead of your mouth. I mean, if people think of salespeople, and the cool thing is going to be some people listen to this, they may think, well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm responsible for business development. I'm working for a law firm or an accounting firm or a recruiting firm, but I'm not a good salesperson. Well, the cool thing about this is they have a false perception a lot of times of what sales is. Sales is calling you up and persuading you to buy something. And that is not, in professional services, what marketing and sales is. It is literally an investigative, diagnostic approach that when you do that, man, you can develop relationships and be seen as a trusted advisor, as opposed to the commodity on the shelf who's going to sit down and try to convince you that your tax. I love this example, is that I've been blessed. Right. I haven't had an audit. And if anybody on the IRS is on the line, just don't tag me now. Right?
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
I get my bill every year from my CPA to do my taxes. And I always look at the bill and I go, well, Sam's pretty good and he's good. But it's like, I wonder if this, because I commoditize that. Right. If I get a letter from the IRS that I'm being audited, I'm calling Sam. Right. I say, Sam, here's the letter. And whatever he charges me, I'm going to pay because he's going to shift into this place of protector and advisor in my mind. And that's the truest thing that, when a legal document is being drawn up, it's not the document. It's that person who says, I'm doing this for you, to care for you, to take care of you, to make sure you're moving down the right line, to be able to solve your situation, circumstance.
I think you've got some great ideas, Mike. I'd love for people to hear more about them and find out how they can reach you. But first, as we close our time, what would be 3 action steps people can take to kind of integrate some of these ideas that you're sharing with us?
The first one is when you prepare for a sales call, is don't get caught up in the trap of preparing what you're going to say. Prepare the questions that you want to ask, because whatever questions are asked of you, you will be able to think on the spot. But it's the questions that you ask going into a meeting, an interaction with somebody, is what will really help you get skin in the game. The second is, if you look at the key part of an investigative type of phone call or whatever, I call it the summary. It's after I've heard whatever I've heard you say, before I go into my diatribe, before I go into my exposition, I'm going to summarize, this is what I've heard you say. This is what I've heard, the problem, the situation, the circumstance, the pain, whatever. This is what I've heard. And is there anything I'm missing? And because by doing that, it's a way of going in and making the person feel heard and feel that you have their best interest. And there's clarity. They go, he gets it. Right. And I think that's what we're after. And then the third is that, if you're looking to input, you can find me either at lightingthepath.net.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just going to ask for your links, lightingthepath.net. And we'll put your links on the show notes, Mike.
Yeah, put it on there. And then my name is my email address. It's mike@mikelejeune.com. So, but you reach out to me. I interview C-suite leaders and people playing that space. And there's podcasts on there you can listen to. I write blogs that are on this subject because I'm passionate about the heart aspect of business transactions. And I think in professional services, that's how you separate yourself from the commoditizers, the online, the pitch people out there.
Well, this is great, Mike. Thank you for being here. And what are some other services that you offer and people that would be ideal prospects for you that you think they'd want to know about you?
Scott, I do business development and recruiting training. I do coaching in that space. I do executive coaching along those lines. But I also have grown to a point where I do a lot of work in the leadership development space, where I work with companies and with their leadership team and helping them wrestle with things of helping managers and leaders understand how am I wired as a leader as I interact with others. Because the more you understand how you're wired, it gives you the ability to be able to adapt to the way others are wired, who are going to be wired differently. You and work with effective delegation and conflict management, and looking at having the leadership team operating more cohesively, or having the leader operate more cohesively with their team for one purpose, and it's to raise the productivity of the people that are part of the team through one word again. It's called engagement. It's how do you have an environment where people feel engaged by the role that they have and what they play, not just at work, but the cool thing about it is everything we work with. And matter of fact, a lot of stuff you and I talked about today, if you think about it, and you think about your spouse at home or your kid, the same thing works with them.
Right.
It becomes a lifestyle more than anything else.
And this is interesting, Mike. And one kind of final thought here is that those listening, you're in the business of developing business from guarded, untrusting professionals. And think of it as a core competency. Building these relationships is a core competency. The more you study something, the more you truly master it by reading, by listening to experts like Mike, the more you grow in your competence level, which means you'll have more success. So Mike, I'm grateful that you've shared your wisdom with us today. I'm definitely going to dig into your site, look at some of your content soon, and kind of cue that up in my reading. Thanks so much for being here today. Again, everybody that's listening, we've got Mike's links on our show notes. You can go to where you've heard this podcast and you'll be able to download or get access to his content that way. And we'll definitely have you on this show here in the next couple of months again, Mike. Thank you so much.
I love it. I love it. And for those people who are trying to listen to it, I appreciate you working with me on February 9th at our virtual conference that we're having specifically on business development and recruiting practices. So I think you can have that in the show notes also.
That's great. And we'll put that link on there. And tell us about that program again, Mike.
Yeah, it's what I did is I picked 5 what I call heart-led people who are great technicians. And Scott was actually one of the first people I thought of.
Thank you.
There's myself, there's Barb Bruno, there's Rob Mosley, there's Cindy Jennings, are coming together to put on a virtual conference for 2 purposes. I guess 3. One is to get people to content to be able to deal in today's time with the marketplace, high content driven. Second of all, it's designed to be a shot in the arm, which we need right now. We got to be filling up. I had 3 phone calls yesterday. They kept trying to rattle me and throw me off path. But I had other things going in that were filling me back up. And I think that the drain, the energy drain that's taking place, got to find some things in that space.
Absolutely.
So that's what it's designed for. We've got it midday central so that you can work in the morning, work in the afternoon. And it's February 9th, 10th, and 11th. And the cool thing, Scott, is if any of your listeners, if they go there, there's a coupon code. If they type in the word Scott, SCOTT, they'll get a discount that drops it down to hardly anything. And then for those who can't attend, if you wanted the recordings, same thing. You'll get a recording, but all of it, you can listen to it whenever you want to. But if you put in Scott in the coupon code, it drops it down to like $100. So it's
that's great. Well, that's very generous. Thank you for offering that to our listeners today, Mike. Again, thanks for being here, and we'll have you back on the show here in the next couple of months, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Rainmaking Podcast. For more information about our recruiting services for international law firms, visit our website at attorneysearchgroup.com. To inquire about having Scott speak at your next convention, conference, sales meeting, or executive retreat, visit therainmakingpodcast.com.